and done. Okay. So we're kicking off with the intervals this evening. What I'm going to focus on is um, the intervals. There are times where intervals you do take it earlier, you do take it later. What incidents should happen that will allow us to take the intervals a bit earlier. I'm also going to focus on in Law 12 about cessation times. When do you call stumps? When don't you call stumps? When do you play on? When don't you play on? But we'll get there when we get to law number 12. So when it comes to intervals, there are 5 examples of scheduled intervals. A period between close of play on one day and the start of the next. Your interval between innings is a scheduled interval. Interval for meals, which is your tea and your lunch. Your interval for drinks, and any other agreed interval. These are 5 examples of scheduled intervals. So when it comes to your duration of your interval, so in terms of law just guide us by saying you decide how long your interval needs to be. All we're telling you is whatever duration, and if you look at Test match cricket or even provincial or Colts cricket, lunch is 40 minutes and tea 20 minutes, decided by the governing body. So whatever the governing body decided. So in our case, let's use Cricket South Africa as an example. Our lunchtime will be 40 minutes. So all the law tell us is from the call of time when your session ended before lunch, and the call of play, which indicates the restart of your session after lunch. That period needs to be 40 minutes. That's all that the law tell us. It must be 40 minutes. That's why we have, because let's say in our case, our lunch is 12:10 till 12:50. But 99% of our time, we don't finish exactly 12:10. We finish 12:11, 12:12, 12:13, depending. So let's say we finish 12:12. The final ball gets bowled. We look at our watch. It's now 12:12. We call over, time, and lunch. So our lunch needs to be 40 minutes from that moment that you call time, which was 12:12. So the first ball after lunch will be bowled at 12:42. When it comes to the interval between innings, according to law, it's 10 minutes. Playing conditions, it's 10 minutes as well. So now what we're going to cover next is there are times where the lawmakers, before these changes were incorporated into the laws, the timings were very, very rigid, meaning if your lunch is 10 past 12, your lunch is 10 past 12. No matter what happened, that is your lunch. Your tea is 3 o'clock. No matter what happened, your tea is 3 o'clock. That was many, many, many years ago. It was very strict, very rigid. There was no flexibility. Your lunch is your lunch and your tea is your tea. Kom maar storm maar 10 past 12 vat ons lunch. Lawmakers then realize to maximize play, to get as much cricket in a day or a match, there needs to be flexibility when it comes to our intervals. We need to be able to change it, to tweak it, so that we can maximize play. And hence the reason and the following few slides that we're going to cover is the changes that the lawmakers brought to all these scheduled intervals, where they by changing it, we will now be able to get as much cricket in the day where we can maximize play. So let's see what changes the lawmakers made when it comes to our scheduled intervals and how we can maximize play. So when it comes to the interval between innings, so what the lawmakers decided was, and in this clause, there's also a bit of playing condition that was added. So the laws says if an innings ends when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed close of play, that will be stumps for that day. We'll get to the playing condition part now. And again, um, as usual, the format of the lectures is I focus first on the theory, and then when we do the practical exam, the revision questions or examples later on, we're going to see how we apply this theory in practice. So yeah, so just bear with me. Let's just go through the theory first. So the law states if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the agreed close of play, that will be stumps for that uh, for for that day, and no change to be made to the time of start of play the next day, seeing that you finished a bit earlier. I'll just use an example to illustrate what the law say, and then I'm going to bring in the playing condition as well. So our close of play 17:30. If side A gets bowled out at 17:22, what happens next? According to law, that should be stumps. Why is it stumps? Because law tells us if an innings ends 10 minutes or less to the close of play, it will be stumps. And yes, we finished 8 minutes earlier on day one. We will not start 8 minutes earlier on day two. The law say we can ignore the 8 minutes that we lost. Okay, that's law. They added a bit of playing condition, and they said, uh, or when there are less than 2 overs remaining to complete the minimum over requirement on any day, there shall be no further play on that particular day. So if the few, we will cover it in a bit more detail later on, where we need to combine or marry the two, the law and playing conditions here. So there's quite a few playing conditions that, let's say you'll find a playing condition under 11 and under the law 12, and you need to marry the two playing conditions uh, to be able to to be able to get to how you need to handle the situation. So many of these things cannot be just be looked at and applied in isolation. You need to marry one or two other playing conditions, and that is what we're going to cover today when it comes to um, your cessation time, innings ends, uh, because there's other playing conditions under law 12 that we need to bring in here. But to focus just on this particular playing condition that says if an innings ends with 10 minutes or less remaining before the agreed close of play, it will be stumps. But also the playing condition adds, uh, or when there are less than 2 overs remaining for the requirement of the day, it will also be stumps. Just an example of what this, if there are less than 2 overs remaining. So we know we need to bowl 104 overs in the day. So what this is telling us, let's say we get to 17:22, and we know we should bowl 104, and we in the 102nd, so 102.2 overs. On the second ball of 102.2, the 10th wicket gets taken. So now it's 17:22, and we're in the 102.2 over of the day. So now in this scenario, it will be stumps. Why? Because both criteria is met for it to be stumps. The first criteria is there are 10 minutes or less remaining to T. It's 17:22 now. And the other criteria is we have less than 2 overs remaining um, to uh, to complete the minimum overs for the day, because we're in 102.2 overs. And in that case, it will be stumps for on this particular day. Again, bear, we're going to do examples later on, which will make the theory much more clearer. So that's the first in terms of saving a bit of time in the match when it comes to the change of innings interval. Uh, there's also where we save time where when there's a change of innings interval, and this is when a captain declares during either a scheduled interval or an interruption that lasts more than 10 minutes. If that declaration is made in that interval or interruption, you will then incorporate or include your change of innings interval in that interval or interruption. I'll give an example just to illustrate what this 10-line paragraph is saying. Let's say our lunch is at 12 o'clock. We look at our watch. We see it's 12. We call overtime in lunch. So from 12 to 12:40 will be lunch. So South Africa is 600 for two on day two at lunch. So now you take lunch. As you're busy eating lunch, you are at 12:50. Sorry, we took lunch at 12:10. Let's just use the Carl's playing condition. So we took lunch at 12:10. So at 12:25, as you're busy eating, there's a knock on your door, and the captain of South Africa comes in and saying, "Umpires, we are declaring at 12:25." So we now know our lunch is from 12:10 till 12:50. So this declaration was made in an interval that was of more than 10 minutes duration. So what will technically now happen is there's now a change of innings. So now you actually need to go and inform the opposing captain that there's been a declaration. You need to then also ask, do you want rolling? And if yes, which roller? And then how long? You then need to relay that to your fourth umpire. I'm just thinking now, let's say it's a test match. You need to relay that information to the fourthie, who will then oversee the rolling, etc., etc. So now we'll have a change of innings from 12:25 till 12:35. So we will now incorporate this um, change of innings interval into our lunch. That's all that this paragraph is telling us. So whether it's an interval, it can be lunch, it can be our tea interval. Let's say tea is at 3 o'clock, and at 3, captain comes to you. I'm declaring there will now be a 10-minute change of innings from 3 till 3, rolling, and all those things will happen. That's all that this paragraph is saying. But there is a but, and that but is if a captain comes to you, and let's use our example of 12:10 is our lunch, we know we need to restart at 12:50. So the captain comes to you at 12:45, informing you, I'm declaring. So what happens next? And we know we need to restart at 12:50. We need to be fair on the opposing captain or the opposing team, because what now needs to happen, we cannot expect the opposing side, the opening bats now to get ready. Also, as per the law, rolling also needs to take place. 5 minutes is not enough for all those things to happen. We need to allow for a 10-minute change of innings interval. So there'll be a change of innings from 12:45 till 12:55. And in that change minute, 10 minutes, the rolling and all those things will happen. So that's the only instance where you'll allow it to go past. You need to give the opposing side 10 minutes so that they can get ready and rolling to take place. But that's only if that declaration is 10 minutes or less before, or less than 10 minutes to the restart after your lunch interval. So if our lunch is, let's say it's 12:50, we need to restart. If at 12:50, at 12:40 they come to the clear, that's 10 minutes. That's enough time. Rolling and all those things can take place. We can restart at 12:50. But if they come to you at 12:41, you need to give 10 minutes. We will only restart at 12:51. If they come to you at 12:43, 12:53 we restart. 12:46, 12:56 we'll restart. So now we've covered how the lawmakers, tweaked to save a bit of time when it comes to the change of innings interval. Then, before we move over to how they tweak lunch and tea, they brought in a clause, I can't get to the word, a universal clause where they tell the umpires and umpires, there's a clause in the law where if through adverse conditions, whether it can be ground, weather or light, players needs to leave the field, you are allowed to change your lunch and your tea interval. But there's two conditions that needs to be met. Both umpires and both captains needs to agree. Usually the umpires will agree, but if both captains don't agree, you're not allowed to change your times of your lunch interval. It needs then to stay at the scheduled time of 12:10. 99% of the time they'll agree, especially if there's weather around. They won't argue, but there are times, especially if one captain on the last day is behind the eighth ball, there's rain around, they don't want then times to be changed. They rather want to stick to it, because of the rain and they are behind the eighth ball. So what this point number 4 saying, there is this clause that allows you at any time to change your lunch and your tea, as long as umpires and both captains agree. So let's put this catch-all clause or universal clause just aside. We know at any time this can happen. But now then there are specific times where the lawmaker said if these incidents happen, you don't need the captain's permission, or both don't need to agree. If these instances happen, you will take an early, and we'll start with lunchtime. So you're allowed to change your agree time for lunch if, and remember we're now focusing on if the following 3 instances happen, and again we don't need captain's approval. If these 3 things happen, we're starting with the point number 1. If they happen, the law tells us you will take an early lunch. No agreement needed. If it falls out of these 3 examples, for lunch, we're going to get to tea after this. If it falls out of the scope, then you need both captains to agree. But if it falls within these 3 points, you don't need any agreement. You apply these points. So point number 1 tells us if an innings ends 10 minutes or less to the agreed time for lunch, we will take lunch immediately. Just give me a second. I just want to ask my boy to bring me some water. Ibrahim. Bring me iets drinken nou. Gooi dit in 'n koppie. So if an innings ends when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for lunch, interval to be taken immediately. The interval shall be the agreed duration, and we will include the change of innings interval in the innings. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Our lunch is at 12:10. At 12:02, side A gets bowled out. What happens next? This clause gets activated. That tell us if it's 10 minutes or less to lunch, we take an early lunch. So we're activating this clause. 12:02, the innings ended, so 12:02 will be lunch, and lunch will be 40 minutes. When will we restart after lunch? We will restart at 12:32. We don't need the captain's permission. If one captain tell you no, but I don't want to take lunch at 12:02, I want to take lunch at 12:10, captain, you don't have a say in this instance. The law, this clause gets activated. We will take an early lunch, but it must be 10 minutes or less to the agreed time for your lunch interval. Anytime, whether it's 12:01, 12:10, 12 o'clock, 12:01, 12:02, 12:03, 12:04, doesn't matter as long as it's 10 minutes or less. So now you might ask, what if an innings ends at 12:48? Sorry, at 11:58? What do? This clause then cannot be activated because the innings ended and it's not 10 minutes or less. So now you actually need to have a 10-minute change of innings from 11:58 till 12:08, and you'll probably bowl one over until lunch. Now you might ask the question. In the previous slide, we say there's that universal clause. Let's say the captain comes to you and say, "Can't we take lunch at 11:58?" Technically, you can. There's nothing stopping you because you can activate that universal clause, and as long as both captains agree. But yeah, but for this, it needs to be 10 minutes or less. Point two: when you can change your agreed time for lunch with without captain's approval, the laws tell us if this happens, we need to take lunch. And what is point number two? If because of adverse conditions, whether it's ground weather or light, players needs to leave the field 10 minutes or less to the agreed time for lunch, what do? You'll take lunch immediately. So if it rains, our lunch is at 12:10, it rains at 12:01. What happens next? We'll take lunch. Lunch will be from 12:01 till 12:31, and we first ball needs to be bowled at 12:31. Obviously, weather conditions permitting. If it's still raining at 12:31, obviously we can't start after lunch. But if you stop during lunch, first ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:01, 12:31. But again, it needs to rain 10 minutes or less to activate clause number 2. Clause number 3 when it comes to your lunch. So clause 1 was if an innings ends 10 minutes or less. Clause 2 was if it rains. I'm just using rain as an example, but any adverse conditions of ground weather and light. If it's 10 minutes or less, you activate clause 2 by taking an early lunch. Clause 3, to change your agreed time for lunch. If the players have occasion to leave the field when there are more than 10 minutes remaining for the agreed time for lunch, what happens now? So let's say our lunch is at 12:10. It now rains at 11:50. Can we take an early lunch? According to point number 2, the previous slide says no, we can't take an early lunch because it needs to be 10 minutes or less. It's starting to rain 11:50, which is 20 minutes to lunch. Players now leave the field. What do? Can you take an early lunch? The law allows you, yes. But in this instance, to activate clause number 3, and because it's more than 10 minutes to lunch, you need to get both captains to agree. If there's no agreement, lunch then to be taken at the agreed time, which is 12:10. So for that, from 11:50, if they don't agree, then from 11:50 till 12:10 will be a 20-minute rain interruption. If both captains agree to take lunch at 11:50, your lunch will then be from 11:50 till 12:30. And the first ball then needs to be bowled at 12:30, weather permitting. So to activate clause 3 when it rains and players leaves the field with more than 10 minutes remaining to your agreed time for lunch, you cannot take an early lunch because you cannot activate clause 2 in the law, because clause 2 states it needs to be 10 minutes or less. You need to wait till the agreed time for lunch, but there's a but. Both captains agree, and 99% they'll say, I mean, it's 11:50. They'll tell you, yeah, man, just to save a bit of time, yeah, let's have lunch. Lunch is ready. I see it's ready. Yeah, we might as well take an early lunch. But if there's no agreement, you're not allowed to take an early lunch.
Tula, can I just ask you a question, please?
Mm-hmm.
With regards to point number 3, what is normally the benchmark that you use in the CSA system? Because we made the example now for 20 minutes. Say, for instance, the players need to leave the field 10 to, and it's 10 past lunch, so it's now 20 minutes prior to your scheduled break. Obviously, you can't ask the two captains whether we can take lunch at past, but what time is suitable to use as a benchmark?
We we take a benchmark of half an hour, but we also take into account if the lunch is ready. Because lunch is a hot meal, you then now need to go to the caterers and just ask them. And let's say it's now 11:40, which is half an hour before lunch. It's now starting to rain. So what we'll then do is we'll go to the kitchen. We'll ask the caterers, "Is your lunch ready?" And if they say yes, we'll go to the captains and say, "Captains, are you happy? We take an early lunch because lunch is ready." If they say yes, we'll then take lunch at 11:40. Why do we go to the caterers? Because it doesn't help you now say 11:40, we went off, you go to the captains. Even if they say yes, we can take an early lunch. Now you take an early lunch, but the food is not ready yet. Now the food will only be ready at 12:10. Now for an half an hour, everyone's sitting around looking at each other. And now there's 10 minutes to swallow you. Literally, actually 5 minutes because we need to take the field 5 minutes before the first ball needs to be bowled. So practically it doesn't make sense if lunch is not ready. So practically what we do is we use half an hour as a benchmark, but we do go speak to the caterers. And if lunch is available, and as I said to you, 99% of the time captains will have an issue. They'll take an early lunch. If lunch is not available, we will we will ask the caterers, by when will you have it available? Let's say they say 12 o'clock. Then practically it would make sense then to take lunch only from 12 o'clock until 12:40. And yes, you will lose now 20 minutes due to inclement weather, but it wouldn't make sense forcing a 12:40 lunch. And when lunch is not ready, and you want to force players to go early on the field, swallow their food, some players maybe not going to enjoy any lunch. Yeah, it's just going to leave a bit of issues on the field. Did I answer your question, Keeks?
Yes, you answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Elon,
So now,
I've got a question as well.
yeah, this is an interactive session, so this is
So
not me speaking for 2 hours.
so let's say a team gets bowled out at 11:40. And you go off the field, speak to the caterers, but now they tell you at, let's say, 11:45, lunch is ready, but now you need to go to team A and B. So at 11:47, for instance, both teams agree we can take an early lunch. What do you do with that 7 minutes from 11:40 to 11:47?
Now, to activate these clauses. So when it comes to change of inningses, the law wants when it comes to a change of innings to end 10 minutes or less before the agreed time for lunch to take an early lunch. To activate the universal clause, and I will go back to it now. Playing time needs to be lost through adverse conditions, ground, weather, and light. Change of innings, and in your example, you're using a change of innings. This is not where you now can start activating these clauses. It's fairly law allows you only when it comes to an innings coming to an end, 10 minutes or less. If an innings comes to an end earlier, like in your case, 11:40, you need to have a 10 minutes change of innings. The
Yeah,
side B will come to bat at 12:50 and bat for 20 minutes.
but clause 3 then states if there's any occasion for players to leave the field.
Yeah, so this is here they now referring to other reasons. They're covering change of innings in clause number 1.
Okay.
They here talking about
Okay.
other reasons and not the innings change.
Okay.
Happy?
Happy with it. Okay, so if we change, yeah, if we change the scenario then to say that it's not a change of innings, but a rain interruption at 11:40, and both teams agree to take lunch, because you first need to go and check with the caterers whether the lunch is ready. You agree at 11:47, you will take that 7 minutes. So you'll take lunch from 11:47, but that 7 minutes will be a rain interruption time.
Will be a rain interruption. You
Okay.
can make it rather round numbers. Ask the caterers, when will you have lunch ready? They'll usually tell 10 minutes time, okay, 12:50. You're not gonna use like 11:47, 11:48. You can use round numbers. There's nothing stopping you using 11:47 and only losing 7 minutes to rain. And remember, we do have 60 minutes in the bank, which we can play with if we do lose a bit of time. But yes, to answer your question, that 7 minutes or 10 minutes that it's now lost, that falls under ground weather light, and you can claim it back if you still have time in the bank. Happy guys? You happy with the lunch? The three scenarios when you're allowed to change your agree time for lunch as per the law. You don't need players, captains to agree. So when it comes to tea time, let's see what the lawmakers decided to how they play around with tea time. So here they say, if an innings ends 30 minutes or less to tea, you'll take an early tea, and the 10-minute change of innings interval will be incorporated into your tea interval. So same principle as to your lunch when an innings ends. Just the big difference here is the 30 minutes, whereas lunch is 10 minutes or less. Tea is 30 minutes or less if an innings ends. So our tea is at 3 o'clock. Anytime from 14:30 onwards, if an innings ends, we will take an early tea. So if an innings ends at 14:30, we will take an early tea from 14:30 till 14:50. The 10-minute change of innings interval will be incorporated into your tea interval. If an innings ends at 14:50, this is 10 minutes to tea. It falls in under this point number 1 of 30 minutes or less. We'll take an early tea. Tea will be from 14:50 till 15:10, and the 10-minute change of innings will be incorporated. Point 2, and again we're focusing on how to maximize play for the day, how to play around with your tea interval. How can you play around with your tea interval to maximize play? So point 2, the lawmaker said, when 30 minutes remain before the agreed time for tea, there's already an interchange of innings interval in progress. What do? Now they say, play to resume at the end of the change of innings interval. An example just to illustrate this, our tea is at 3 o'clock. At 14:25, side A gets bowled out. So now, can we take an early tea when an innings ends at 14:25? No, we cannot take an early tea. Why can't we take an early tea? Because we cannot activate clause number 1. Because clause number 1 tells us 30 minutes or less. When an innings ended off side A at 14:25, it's 35 minutes. So now, point 2 tells us. So now with 35 minutes to 35 minutes to tea when the innings ended at 14:25. So now the change of innings interval will be from 14:25 till 14:35. That's a 10-minute change of innings interval. But now at 14:30, what do? The law say, yes, you now 30 minutes to tea, but you cannot take an early tea. You need to take it. You resume the innings at the end of the 10-minute change of innings interval. So at 14:35, side B needs to come out to bat. Side B will then bat from 14:35 till 3 o'clock when we will take our tea interval. Point 3 tells us, and it's the same principle as on the lunch. There's just a difference here is 30 minutes to go, 30 minutes or less before the agreed time for tea. So lunch was 10 minutes if it rains. Here it's 30 minutes. So our tea is at 3 o'clock. So at 14:30, it rains. We can take an early tea from 14:30 till 14:50. But it must rain 30 minutes or less. Same principle as with the lunch. Just the difference here is 10 minutes in lunch if it rains. Here it's 30 minutes. Point 4. If a stoppage is already in progress, when 30 minutes remain before the agreed time for lunch, what do you then do? The law now allows you to bring tea forward by 30 minutes. An example to illustrate point number 4, our tea is at 3 o'clock. It starts raining at 14:20. Can we take an early tea? No, we cannot take an early tea because if we're going to go to point 3 said 30 minutes or less. So it rained 14:30. 14:20. It's now 40 minutes till tea. So we cannot activate clause 3. But now we can activate clause 4. Right? But clause 4 tell us. So it now rains at 14:20. So we know we cannot activate clause 3. So nothing we can do about it now. But when we get to 14:30, which is now 30 minutes to tea, we can now activate clause 4 by now saying it's tea at 14:30. So we'll take tea at 14:30 till 14:50. So we technically, let's say we can start the rain stop during tea and we can start after tea at 14:50. So technically we only lost 10 minutes from 14:20 till 14:30. That's all that point number 4 is telling us. Another time saving mechanism. Again, this wasn't in the law for many years, but then lawmakers, as time went by, they saw, and no disrespect to the number 10 and 11 batters. There are some very good 10 and 11 batters, but they are the exceptions to the rule. Most 10 and 11 in all levels of cricket, from international right up until lower league cricket, the 10 and 11, they usually not that good with the bat. So a time-saving mechanism that the lawmakers brought into the game was, they said, when a side is 9 wickets down, when we get to our tea interval, we will not, and we get to tea, we will not take an early tea. We will not take tea. We will play an extra 30 minutes, a max of 30 minutes, to see if the fielding side can take the 10th wicket, but only a max of 30 minutes. I'll just use 2 examples to illustrate what the law tells us. Firstly, side must be 9 wickets down. If they're 8 down, you cannot activate this clause. So if they're 9 down, our tea is at 3 o'clock, and they're 9 down. Let's say side A is 400 for 9. You look at your watch, you see it's 3 o'clock. Can you take tea time? No, you cannot take tea. Law now tell us you need to delay tea to a max of 30 minutes. So if you take, you now allow the fielding side to, or allow them to try to take the 10th wicket, and let's say they take the 10th wicket at 15:10. What happens now? Now you take you take tea time. Tea time will be from 15:10 till 15:30, and the 10-minute change of interval will be incorporated into our tea interval. Remember, I said max 30. So what happens? The side is 9 down. We get to 3 o'clock. We delay. We allow play to continue. And again, this is what the law say. Captain cannot come to you and say, yeah, but I'm past 3 o'clock. We want to take 3 o'clock now. I want to go off. You tell that captain. Law tell us, because you're 9 down, we will play an extra 10 minutes. Whether you're happy or not, it's irrelevant to me. We're playing an extra 30 minutes. Try to get this wicket in 30 minutes, then we can all go and enjoy tea. But if they can't take the 10th wicket in the 30 minutes, we now get to 15:30 and they're still 9 down, and the final ball gets bowled. You look at your watch, you see it's 15:30. Now you have to take tea time. You can only play a max of 30 minutes. You now take tea. Tea will now be from 15:30 till 15:50. So just to summarize this clause again, side has to be 9 down. Even if that 9 wicket falls within the 3 minutes, meaning let's say our tea is at 3 o'clock. You now see it's 14:58. You start the over, but the side is 200 for 8. Now at the first ball of the over at 14:58, they take the 9th wicket, and because they 9 down, and yes, it's less than 2 minutes to go to tea, you will not take tea. You allow that the incoming batter, the 11th batter, to come out. They now 9 down. You're activating this max 30 minutes clause, but it must be 9 down. And it might, so, and this just use another example of the side is 200 for 8, and at 14:58 the bowler gets bowled on the finger. Gets Fisher come on. Fisher no needs treatment. You quickly need to go off. What do you now do? Will you allow the other bat to come in? You will take an tea time. The reason for tea time is they're only 8 down. Yes, the batter's now going off, but you will take tea time because the law tell us under the over law, if a wicket falls or a batsman needs to retire within 3 minutes or less than 3 minutes to go to your lunch or your tea interval, you'll take an early tea. So that is another clause that get activated in this example. But just the point I was trying to make is about the side needs to be 9 down. If they 8 down and a batter retires and needs to go off, you cannot activate this clause and say, yeah, but the number 11 batter must come in because this batters now, they're not 9 down, they're 8 down. And in this example, you take an early tea at 14:58. Interval for drinks. Let me just cover drinks, and then I'll get to the end of the intervals law, and then I'll open the floor just for questions before I go on to law 12. So when it comes to interval for drinks, when it comes to the law just guides us by saying it shall not exceed 5 minutes, but the playing condition is specific for test cricket, even for provincial cricket, even Cards cricket. When it comes to drinks, 4 minutes. In 3-day or 4-day cricket, even test match cricket, it's 4 minutes. And then point number 2 is just saying, and this is again law, playing condition is exactly the same. If our drinks is at 11:05 and a wicket falls anytime from 11 o'clock to 11:05, we'll take drinks immediately within 5 minutes to the agreed time. It must be 5 minutes. If a wicket falls at 10:59, that's 6 minutes. You won't take an early drink. You'll allow the new batter to come in. Any questions on the intervals, especially with regards to the tea? I've covered most of you. You've asked questions on the lunch interval. Any questions on when we change our times for our tea interval? Yeah. No, okay, no, you don't have to ask. Sometimes, later on something will pop up, or tomorrow something will pop up. Whenever you can ask me anytime, and I'll gladly answer.
Not a
Nick?
question from my side, but with all these activations, yes, I thought I knew the law.
Yeah, it is. But remember, this is new to you. There's lots of playing conditions that also kicking in here. There's lots of law. There's a lot. The law and the playing conditions is exactly the same. But even for me, I mean, we weren't exposed to this more day laws. We were fed a diet of one day cricket. I mean, and even now in Boland and Western Province. we fed a diet, we're exposed to white ball cricket, 20 and 50 overs. We're not exposed to these intervals and tea, and so we don't deal with these, year in, year out. So I also, initially, we weren't exposed to this, so it was new. So because I mean you don't deal with this, and I mean you've read it many a times, but now you've actually going into much more depth. You'll be using examples and you're actually seeing, okay, I see that's how it works. But I also found out only once starting doing it practically. I mean, yes, I've read the law book so many times, and only once I start doing it practically, then I realize, oh shit, I didn't know that's what they actually meant. I've read it, I mean, the clause a million times, but only once I started doing it practically, then I realized, oh, that is wat hulle bedoel. Ek het actually geweet daai nie, maar anyway, I've read it, but now I know the interpretation. So Keeks, don't worry. Um, I was where you are. It was like, I was also new world opening, but yeah, you're gonna do so much of no 3-day cricket from next season onward, God willing, and you're going to be exposed to this, and yes, you're gonna have to then start knowing this. Now it is new to you, but that's why we prepare you for the exam, and even after the exam. So a lot of these things for me is like. It's like there needs to be lots of constant revisions. I mean, I quoted it like, being fit. Let's say you are super fit on the 1st of January. You've been practicing for 6 months, not non-stop. And 1st of Jan, you're super fit. And let's say you run a comrades and now you're super fit. If you stop doing anything for the next 6 months and you say, I'm not doing anything, I'm sitting, ek sit op my gat vir die volgende 6 maande en 1st July, then I'm only going to start running again. You are going to struggle that 1st of July when you run again because there's been nothing for 6 months. You need to, keep, practicing, keep fit, keep oiling that machine. If you're not going to oil the machine regularly, the machine gaan roes. So you need to oil it regularly. So what I'm trying to say is there's gonna be lots of revision, especially winter. Winter is the time because in season we don't have much time. The games come thick and fast. Yes, you still need to oil the machine, but not like in terms of winter where you train hard, like on your fitness, where you sit with your playing conditions, where you go through them, where you work out examples, where you really put in that extra hard work during the winter. So what I'm also saying is even after the exam, don't slack, keep on running, keep on working through examples, keep on reading at playing conditions. You can phone me anytime. The three of you can work together. What I've noticed is, and even when I came through the system, I wrote my exam with Marlon Jansen and Yuri Sadler. So we came through the system together from tournaments to writing our nationals together. So we are fairly. I mean, I'm close to the others, but I mean, we're closer because we came through the system. We still, after now, are being more than a decade on the panel. We're still in contact. We're still regular. We're still good friends. But the point I'm trying to make, we regularly contact each other about playing conditions. We speak, we revise. We still work with each other. It's so the three of you. Because you came through the system together, there's going to be that kind of bond. You often see that bond whoever came through the system together. So work together. Don't be shy. Umpiring is as much as individual, but it's a hugely a team sport. And yeah, work together. And as I said, you can work with me, you can work with Tom. Anyone work together. Yeah. So Keegan, lots of hard work ahead. All I'm saying is keep fit, keep revising, keep oiling that machine. Don't it never stops. Whether you during the season or off season, although off season you need to put in much more hard work than during the season because during the season there are lots of games. If there are no
Yeah,
further,
I can
yeah.
concur. Keegan is definitely a machine. I'm glad you brought up that point.
Okay, machine. Even if you're a machine, if you still need to oil, you can be a Ferrari. you still need to put in oil in that Ferrari. So you need to oil that machine, geeks. And you can, and oiling the machine is, yes, you oil it on your own, but you can also work with anyone, whether it's Wimpy, Stacy, as a team, me, Tom, whoever. There's the bottom line is keep on oiling that machine. I'll now move
Say
on
the
to,
Western Province Umpire of the Year.
yeah, he's
Hey,
being modest.
hey,
He's being,
we're busy with training now, Keegan.
yeah, he's being modest. Keeks, when is your function? Is this weekend, isn't it?
Yes, it's on Saturday evening.
No, okay. I'm not doing anything on Saturday. I'm not doing anything on Saturday. That was, sorry for coughing. It was a cough. Law 12. Start of play and cessation of play. And here I'm going to bring in lots of playing conditions just to show you, and I'm going to use practical examples to illustrate how the playing condition works. When it comes to a change of innings, when there's a change of innings anytime during the day, you will deduct 2 overs from the minimum overs to be bowled. There are exceptions. What are the exceptions? Lunch, tea, or when play is suspended. So with any time there's a change of innings, you need to take off 2 of your minimum overs, except if the change of innings occurs during lunch. Then obviously your 10 minutes gets incorporated into your lunch. You don't take off 2 overs then. If it gets incorporated into your tea, you don't take off 2 minutes. If there's a rain interruption and it gets incorporated, you don't take any 2 overs off. Another playing condition. When it comes to an over in progress, when an innings ends mid-over, doesn't have to be mid, or if an innings ends when during an over, whether 1 ball is bowled, whether it's 3, whether it's 5, if it ends mid-over, what happens to that over when it comes to your minimum overs or overs bowled for the day? Now it says, and there is an exception. We'll get to the exception. Now they tell you round up that number, meaning, let's say we had over 64.2, and on the third ball of that over, at 64.3, the 10th wicket gets taken, and now there's a 10-minute change of innings interval. So it's now 64.3. What happened now to 64.3? Now the over ends. The playing condition tell us you will now need to take that over as a completed over, i.e. round up that over. It will now be round up from 64.3 to 64 to 65 overs. From 64.3 to 65. You will round up. This is what the playing condition tell us. So it will now be 65 overs bowled. So now to calculate the overs remaining for the day, and let's assume this didn't happen during a lunch or a tea, you now take your total overs, 104, you subtract your 65 that was bowled, and subtract 2 for the innings, and you'll get an answer. We're going to do a few examples later on, but I'm just showing you how the theory works. When it comes to the last hour, you'll find that before I get to the last hour, I forgot to mention there was an exception. Remember, I said to you, bullet point 2 speaks about if an innings ends during an over, you will round up that over. So if it's 22.1, you will round it up to 23 overs if the innings ends there. But there's an exception. Unless this change of innings occurs in the last hour, And what will you do if a change of innings occurs in the last hour? We've I'm opening the floor. What happens if an innings changes in the last hour? How will we handle it? I'm asking any one of you.
You need to deduct the overs completed from the 16 minimum overs, and then round that answer up to the next whole number. So basically, you're gonna round down. So the let's say 2.1 overs bowled of the minimum of 16, it will only stay at 2 and not rounded up to 3.
Keegan, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, in the last hour, you must work it out to the specific ball. So if it's 2.3, you deduct 2.3 from the 16, you will get 14.3 balls to be bowled. So you don't round it up and complete and take that over as a completed over. You need to bowl that 3 overs because according to the law, you have to bowl 16 overs within the last hour.
Yes, agree. You're like 40% there, Keeks. So if there's an innings change in the last hour, what needs to happen? Two calculations needs to be made, and the greater of the two is the minimum overs that needs to be bowled. What are those two calculations that needs to be made? I'm opening the flow again.
Overs based on time and
Yes,
overs based on the overs that's left.
overs. That's it. That's the answer I was looking for. If there's an innings change in the last hour, two calcs needs to be made, and the greater of the two, an overs based calc and a time remaining calc. Okay. But if it's not in the last hour and there's a in and then and there's a end of an innings mid over or not mid but during an over, you then round up. Okay, happy. Thanks, guys. Last hour, there's a playing condition that speaks about on the final day, on day 3 of your Colts game, let's say day 4 of a Div 1 or 2 game, or day 5 of a test match, and both captains and coaches agree that there's no prospect of either side achieving a victory, they may approach the match officials and request that the match be finished during the interval prior to the commencement of the last session, at any time at the time of the commencement of the last session, or any time after that. All I'm just trying to show you with this clause is, and there are many occasions where you get to, in let's say in a Colts game, you'll get to tea time on day 3, and the one side batted and they batted and they scored 500 for 3. Then the other side batted and they scored 400 for 1. Now we're at tea time in day 3 and the one side is 400 for 1. And we only in innings 1 of the side batting second. So there's going to be no result in this game. So the playing condition allow for them to what we call shake hands. But now, when are they allowed to shake hands? They're only allowed to shake hands from tea onwards. No, not before tea. They cannot come to you on at lunchtime on day 3. And even if the game is going nowhere, and we know that no one is going to win, they cannot come to you and say, Ampa, we want to shake hands. Die Stormers speel rugby vanmiddag. I would love to go watch. No, sorry guys. A playing condition only allows us to shake hands from tea onwards. So we have to wait till it's tea. And from any time from tea onwards, then we can shake hands. So they can shake hands during tea. Even if they start after tea, even if they bowl one ball after tea and they say, let's not waste our time, let's shake hands, no issue. You'll allow them to shake hands. It is their game. The umpires, we never tell captains or don't shake hands. If they want to shake hands, they'll shake hands. We just need to make sure that we allow them to shake hands when they're allowed to shake hands, which is anytime from tea onwards. So if we take out tea 3 o'clock and they come to you at 1 minute past 3 and say we want to shake hands, you say no problem, let's shake hands. What happens if a wicket falls in the last over of the day? We're going to do quite a few examples where we going to see different scenarios and how to handle it. Before I go any further, I just want to confirm, just in terms of your times for the day, we know we start at 10 o'clock and we end at 17:30. And the latest we can play is to complete the overs is 1800 hours. So the complete overs is a max of 30 minutes from your cessation time. And let's assume it's 7:30 in for all these examples. So the first playing condition tells us that there shall be no further play on any day, and we're not referring here to the last day. The last day is something else, because that's when the last hour kicks in, and it's we handle it differently. But we're now speaking on day 1, day 2. No further play on any day. If a wicket falls or a batter retires, all players needs to leave the field during the last over, last of the minimum number of overs, and within 3 minutes of the scheduled cessation time, or thereafter. This also to apply to any additional time permitted to complete the minimum over requirement for the day. If an over is interrupted, in these circumstances, some shall be done for the day and they over completed. Again, this is the theory. Let's break it up into smaller pieces and use a few examples to illustrate what this is trying to say. I'm going to do lots of examples later on. I just want to show you how this playing condition works. Let's break it up. It says, there shall be no further play on any day. Day 1 and 2. Day 3 something else, because that's when the last hour kicks, the last hour usually kicks in on day 3 for Colts, and we have the different set of playing conditions. But on day 1 and 2, no further play on any day on day 1 and 2. If a wicket falls or a batter retires, all players needs to leave the field during the last over of the minimum for that day, and within 3 minutes to the cessation time. I'll use an example to illustrate this first section. 17:30 is our cutoff time. At 17:28, we know we need to bowl a minimum of 104 in the day. At 17:28, we in over 103.2. They take a wicket. Side, the fielding side take a wicket. 17:28, and we in over 103.2. The second ball of the last of the 104th over. This first portion is telling us, because we're in the last over of the day, and because we're within 3 minutes of the cessation time, we need, it will be stumps. It will be close of play for that particular day. Just another examples. We're going to do for, more examples later on. I'm just trying to show you how the theory worked. And again, this is new to you, so don't worry. We're going to cover a few examples tonight. I'm going to give you homework to do. Which, then once we've gone through all the theory, a huge part of our preparation for the nationals is going through examples, going through questions. Het gaan uit by julle oor uitkom. Your Wimpy, your wife is going to phone me and say, Abdullah, you need to stop, because this man is speaking about in his sleep, no further play any day for wicket falls during the last over. you're going to start speaking in your sleep. That's how it's going to come into your oor right, which is good. I've got no issue with that. Then we've achieved our purpose. We're going to get you ready
With
for the
you don't
exam.
have an issue of me speaking in my sleep or you phoning my wife phoning you.
No, I mean she's gonna. I've got an issue you speaking in her sleep, but she's gonna phone me. She's gonna find your number on my phone and say you need to stop, Abdullah, because die man praat in sy slaap hierso. En hy praat los en playing with this in sy slaap. Then I'll say, wat sy naam nou weer? Wimpie?
Kelby, Dula. Kelby.
Yeah, I say, Kelby, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I've actually accomplished exactly what I wanted. So yeah, thank you for actually sharing that with me. So yeah, so that's the. So it needs to be within 3 minutes of your cessation time, and it needs to be in the last over of the day. Those two conditions needs to be met. If not, you need to play on. Again, just bear with me. We're going to do quite a few examples to illustrate, how this works. The second portion of this paragraph speaks about this shall also apply to the additional time permitted in order to complete the minimum requirement for the day. Meaning, at 17:30, we know we need to bowl 104 overs. If we have not bowled 104 overs by 17:30, we cannot stop, because we do have this 30 minutes in the bank to complete overs. I'm not now referring to the 60 minutes that's in the bank to make up time if we lose it due to adverse conditions. This is that 30 minutes that we have at our disposal to complete the overs. So at 17:30, we've in over 101.2 and a wicket falls. Even though it's 7:30, even though let's say we on our cessation time, but we only in 101.2. What happens next? We cannot say there's no further play on this day because we haven't met our minimum requirement for the day. That other batter needs to come in. If we were at 17:30 and we were in 103.1, now we're in the last hour, the last over of the game, and we at our cessation time, now we can call stumps. Don't worry, we're going to do a few examples that will, and this is new to you, so it's going to take, this concept is going to take you to cover a few examples, to do a bit of homework, to do more examples. You'll see it's going to become much more clearer. Stumps. So when do you call it stumps? And again, not on the final day. On the final day, something different, because that's when the last hour kicks in. You need to bowl a minimum of 16 overs in the last hour. And last day is different. This is now on others' day 1 and 2. So now the playing condition tells us that it will be stumps if play is suspended for any reason at or after the scheduled or rescheduled cessation time. What does that mean? Our cessation time is 17:30. At 17:33, in the 100th over and 1 ball, it starts to rain and players leaves the field. What happens next? The playing condition tell us it will be stumps. Why will it be stumps? Because the playing condition tell us it will be stumps, and the playing conditions say if we need to leave the field due to adverse conditions, it can be rain, bad light, but let's use rain as an example. At or after the scheduled cessation time, it will be stumps. But it needs to be whatever your cessation time is that you've calculated, because there are times in the day where you reschedule your cessation time due to inclement weather. You need to look at the last picture that you drew, and that cessation time you need to take into account when applying this playing condition in terms of stumps drawn. So just to go over it again, if we leave the field due to adverse conditions on or after our cessation time, it will be stumps. Even if we still have 60 minutes in the bank, it will be stumps. That's irrelevant. So what I mean by even if we have 60 minutes in the bank, let's say day one, with no issues with rain. We started at 10, we get to 17:30. We've only bowled 100 overs. We now obviously know we can't stop. We need to play on because we need to bowl 104. We've got this maximum of 30 minutes to complete the overs. So 100 overs at 17:30, we play on. So now we get to 17:35. We're now in over 101.2 and it starts to rain. What do? It will be stumps for that day, because point number one tell us if we go off the field after our on or after our cessation time, it will be stumps. It's irrelevant if we still have time in the bank. You activate this clause if we go on, if we go off the field at or after our cessation time. Here's an example to illustrate this. On day 2 of our Colts match, play is scheduled to end at 17:30. However, play continues in order to complete the 104 overs. At 17:30, we haven't bowled our 104 overs yet. So we get to 17:34 and play is now interrupted due to rain. And we've only bowled 99 overs. So now clause 1 gets activated. Because we're after our cessation time, play is done for the day. We've reached our cessation time. Another one. Stumps is also in the event of players already being off the field for suspension of play at the most recent rescheduled cessation time. It will be stumps at that time. What does this mean? And our example will make it easier to understand this clause. Our cessation time is 17:30. At 17:20 it starts to rain. Can we call stumps at 17:20? No, we cannot call stumps because we cannot activate clause 1, because clause 1 wants it to be at cessation time or later. So we cannot activate clause 1. In this clause 2, it rains at 17:20. So we cannot activate clause 1. So what do we do now? This clause now tell us, once we get to our cessation time, which was 17:30, now we can call stumps. We can tell the captains, guys, sorry, we've reached our cut-off time for the day, which is 17:30. We'll see you tomorrow. That's all that this is saying. Example, day 2 of our Colts match. Play is to end 17:30. At 17:20 it starts to rain and players needs to field. If it's still raining at 17:30, stumps at 17:30. Any questions on what I've just covered? I know it's a lot to digest, but once you go through the slides again, I'm going to send you lots of examples. It will be a bit easier. I assume the silence is there's no question. I'm also now going to go through a few examples of when stumps is drawn, when stumps is not drawn. So assuming our hours of play is 10 till 17:30. There was no issues of rain. We didn't reschedule our cessation time during the day. So example number 1, and let's make this a bit interactive. At 17:29, in the 101st over of the day, a wicket falls. What happens next? I'm opening the floor.
You will need to continue playing, Dula,
Why?
because you have not yet bowled 104 overs, nor are you in the 104th over of the day.
Well
So,
done, yeah. Well done.
yeah.
That's exactly why you need to continue. Play to continue until you bowl 104 overs, or you get to 6 o'clock, because 6 o'clock is your cut-off time. You're allowed a max of 30 minutes, whichever comes first. Obviously, I mean, there's still 2 point something overs. They'll get done before 6. But yeah, well done. Example 2. A wicket falls at 17:28 in the 103 after 103.3 overs of the day. Keegan, no pressure. This is new to you, so give it your best shot.
You will still need to play, even though you're in the 104th over for the day. You haven't reached your cutoff time of 17:30 at that point.
50% correct. Yes, you are in your 104th over. So both clauses needs to be, you need to comply with both clauses to activate, to call it stumps. So you're in your final over of the day, but you also need to look at your time. What I'm going to bring under your attention, Keeks, is I'm going to take you to that clause. And that clause states, there shall be no further play on any day if a wicket falls or a batter retires or the players need to leave the field in the last over of the day within 3 minutes of the cessation time. So these are the two conditions that you need to ask yourself. Are we in the last over of the day? And are we within 3 minutes of the cessation time when the wicket falls? If you meet both conditions, it stumps for the day. There's no further play. So in our example, are we in the last hour and are we within 3 minutes of our cut-off time? The wicket fell at 17:28.
Yes, that is within 3 minutes.
So because we're within 3 minutes and we're also in the last over, what does the first sentence say? The first few words in this clause say? There will
There
be
shall be
no
no further play.
further play, i.e. stumps for the day. Again, don't worry, Keeks. We're going to do lots of these examples. This is new. Took me 6-7 years, I think, to grasp these concepts. Oh, I made lots of mistakes. I hope my bosses don't listen to these recordings and hear all my mistakes I made in my first 5 years. Remember, in the semi-pro format, there were no match referees. It's only in the franchise division where there were match referees, but in the semi-pro days, no match referees. Captains didn't know the playing conditions either, so we got away with murder those days. So in this, time is to be called or stumps for the day, as we are in the last over of the day, and it is within 2 minutes of the cessation time. So now, because we stopped mid-over, this over to be completed the next morning, so we need to bowl three balls the next morning, and then after completing the 3 balls, we then need to complete a further 104 overs. This one, anyone can answer?
were there any circumstances that were there any circumstances for a rescheduled cessation time, Tula?
No, we assume, remember I said yeah, the second bullet point, we're assuming 10 and 17:30, a good day with no issues.
Okay.
That's the assumption. So let's just work through this, and we're thinking out loud. So I'm helping you thinking out loud. What are the two conditions that needs to be met? Are we in the last hour over of the day? And are we past our cessation time? And what is the latest we can play up until? So, are we past our cessation time?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we keep that inside, but there's another condition that needs to be met. Are we in our final over of the day?
No.
No, we're not. Remember, both conditions needs to be met to call it stumps. And because we're not in our final over of the day, what does that mean?
Continue playing.
We need to continue play. That pattern needs to come in. Both conditions needs to be met for stumps to be called. So play two will continue until you bowl 104 overs, or you get to 6 o'clock, whichever comes first. Remember, they have a max of 30 minutes to complete the overs. Example 4. We asking again. We stick to the process. Ask you the same question because two conditions needs to be met. Are we past our cessation time, or are we within 3 minutes of our cessation time? That's the first condition. And the second condition is, are we in the last over of the day?
So I'll kick it off. So yes, we have passed the cessation time and we are in the last over of the day.
What does that mean?
That will mean
Stumps for
we
the
will
day.
call stumps.
It's baie mooi manne, stumps for the day, yes. And tomorrow, what will happen?
You will need to bowl that 5 balls and
5
then
balls.
complete 104 overs.
That's exactly what needs to happen. Baie mooi. So time is called, or stumps. We are in the last over, and we passed the cessation time. So over to be completed, and we need to bowl another 104. 2 more examples in terms of stumps drawn. Okay, now I want you to verbalize.
X.
Well, we have passed our cessation time of 17:30. It's already 17:58, but we're not in the last over or the 104th over. Assuming that there were no issues during the day, we have 30 minutes to complete the overs. We can play up until 6 o'clock, but with 2 minutes remaining, I would assume we would call stumps.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Phew, baie mooi manne. Yeah, exactly. Because we're 2 minutes, and the latest we can play is 3. And they say if a wicket falls within 3 minutes, until the latest we can play, it will be stumps. Your over will be completed the next morning, and you'll bowl a further 104 overs. But now the question is, they bowled 98.3. What happened to that other overs? It's lost to the game. Yes, there's been a slow over rate, and if there was a slow over rate, sometimes not necessarily the case. There could be lots of extenuating, ball gets lost, injuries, but if there was slow over rates, there will be sanctions. But sometimes extenuating can cause overs to be lost, just depending. But well done, guys. And the last example in terms of stumps drawn.
So I'll go. Um, So you've obviously played the extra half an hour to complete the 104 overs of the day. You are in the last over of the day, hence you will call stumps.
Well done, guys. Yeah, it's exactly. Over to be completed the next day, and a further 104. Before we go, move on to our revision questions for the evening. I think I've created 4 of them. It's gonna be interactive. Um, yeah, so we're gonna do it together. I did prepare the answers, but I mean, before I show you the answers, we're gonna go through it together. Any questions before I go on to the revision questions?
Yes, Dula, if we can go back to the previous slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
For this time or the balls, I know in the previous, I think example number 4 and example number 6, we still need to bowl a couple of balls the following day.
Yeah, 4 balls
Does
in this, and I think 5 balls in example 3 or
so
4.
you still start at 10 o'clock.
Yes,
You
you
don't
still
start.
start.
Okay.
No, you do not start earlier. The only time where you start earlier is if you lose time during the game due to adverse conditions. That's the only time when you're allowed to start earlier. If you lose overs due to slow over rate or extenuating circumstances, you do not start earlier. You can only make up lost time if you lose time due to adverse conditions. If you activate that 60 minutes making up lost time clause, you cannot start earlier if you lose overs due to slow over rates or there was lots of extenuating. Happy?
Happy.
And
Thank you.
Dula, those 4 balls that you need to bowl in the second morning, that won't count towards the 104 overs of that day. So it's that
Yes,
4 balls plus another
yes,
further
that's what. Yeah,
104
that's why
overs.
if you read, looks like example 6,
Yeah.
I say the over to be completed the next day and a further 104 to be bowled.
Happy.
Okay. In our 3-day match, close of play 17:30. Team A is all out at 17:28 after 98.4 overs. What happens next? It's interactive, so yeah, we're doing the answer together.
Right. So it's 2 minutes to the cessation time of 17:30.
Mm-hmm.
But you have not completed the minimum overs of 104 for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But only that you will round that up, so that would be 99 overs completed
Mm-hmm.
for the day. So you will need to play an additional 30 minutes, or a maximum of 30 minutes. So you'll take a 10-minute change of innings, deduct 2 minutes from the minimum amount of overs, so from the
Overs.
104 for the day. So you will need to play 102 overs, hence you will need to play an additional 3 overs at resumption of play at 17:38. Keeks?
Agree 100% with you.
You, Manne. Let's first go through the playing condition. Well done, both of you. 100% spot on. So the playing condition states 10 minutes or less before the agreed time of close of play. When there are less than 2 hours remaining to complete, I'm not going to read through everything. So this is the first part. So yes, we 2 minutes to go till close of play. But remember, there's also another clause here that we need to bring in. And Wimpy, you pointed out that clause, the minimum number of overs. So we cannot just say, oh, 70-28, it's 2 minutes, it stumps. We need to marry this clause with the other clause that speaks about minimum of 104 in the day. So when the innings ended, there were still 5 overs left to complete the minimum overs. So now I took 98.4, rounded it up to the next whole number, because there's a playing condition that tells us to round it up, which is 99. Then subtract this from the minimum over for the day, which is 104 minus 99, which leaves me with 5 overs left for the day. And then another clause needs to get activated here. And what is that clause? And Wimpy mentioned it. The change of innings clause, where it says now to subtract 2 overs for the change of innings clause. And now you take 2 from 5, and you're left with 3 overs minimum for the day. Baie mooi manne. So yeah, just to go further on, so latest you can play is 6 o'clock to complete the over. So play will continue until we are 104 overs to complete, or 6 o'clock, whichever comes first. Baie mooi.
Dula, if I answered, so my answer basically started from your second paragraph. Would I have lost points, or should I have started with the first paragraph?
No, no. I'm happy with the second from the second onwards. Yeah, you can add you can add the playing condition, and if you want to, but no need to.
Okay.
Because by answering the question from paragraph 2, it shows me you know exactly what the playing condition states, because here you had to apply. You could see you cannot sometimes read a playing condition in isolation. There's others that you also need to take into account. And looking at your answer, I can see you've married the correct playing conditions with each other to get to your answer of 3 minimum. Baie mooi manne. Okay, Keeks, and I want you to drive, please. And Wimpy, you in the passenger seat. Yeah, there's no rush, so to read through it, think about it, and then we're discussing this, so you don't need to write anything down. Just yeah.
Okay. So obviously we have our cessation times for the game. Lunch is scheduled for 12:10 until 12:50. Lunch gets taken at 12:12. That means that you will commence at 12:52 with Team A on 3. Okay, at 12:40, the captain of Team A informs you that she is declaring. So, because you took lunch at 12:12 and you're supposed to start at 12:52 for the 40-minute lunch duration, the captain declares innings closed at 12:40. That means it's 12 minutes before the start of the next innings. That means you will now go to the opposing captain, tell the captain that she's declaring, ask for rolling, and the innings will then commence 12:50, 10 minutes from when the captain declares the innings closed.
Geeks, just from my side, your partner would like to have another 2 minutes lunch, please. So in my opinion, your lunch is scheduled to be until 12:52. So with the change of innings, that would be technically from 12:40 to 12:50. But lunch or the next ball needs to be bowled at 12:52. I would say we need to start at 12:52 and not 12:50 per se.
Sorry,
Because
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you. Sorry, because lunch is obviously 40 minutes. You can't make it now 38 minutes. Yeah. Did I say 12:50?
Ja, dis wat ek
Because
gehoor het.
I'm looking at the times now, trying to work it out of the laptop. Now your lunch should always be 40 minutes because that's fixed. It's a fixed time.
Ja, happy daarmee. Thanks, Geeks. Thanks, partner.
Well done, partners. Great teamwork. Just wrote down what the law says. So will incorporate the 10-minute change of innings into the lunch interval because the captain declared and you're able to incorporate it. So lunch 12:12, 12:52, as you guys said. So first ball needs to be bowled at 12:52.
You won't lose any overs for the change of innings, obviously.
You can add that to your question as well. I should have added it. Okay, yeah, floor's open.
Lunch to be taken immediately.
Why?
Agreed. Because according to law and playing conditions, that if an innings ends within 10 minutes
prior to
lunch, you will immediately take lunch.
Okay, yeah, by
And
more.
the innings change, again, the innings change will be considered to be during lunch.
300%.
Overs to be deducted.
300%. Well done, guys. Next one. Geeks, over to you.
Okay, so your lunch is 12:10 till 12:50. At 11:55, it starts to rain and the players have to leave the field. That obviously means that's 15 minutes before your scheduled lunch. The umpires can then, and there's no need for the captains to or the umpires to consult with the captains. Lunch will be then taken at 11:55 for 40 minutes.
Geeks, I also said that 2 weeks ago, and Dula showed me that if we are 10 minutes if the interruption occurs 10 minutes or less before lunch, we can automatically take an early lunch. But if it's more than 10 minutes and there's an interruption, there need to be agreement between umpires and captains to take lunch from 11:55. Otherwise, we need to wait until 12:10, according to what my understanding.
Okay, that makes sense, but that's why I asked earlier for the benchmark. Up until what time can the umpires decide before consulting with the captains? But according to playing conditions, I agree with you.
Yeah, well done, guys. Here's the law, and I'm quoting it verbatim. So in this case, because there's more than 10 minutes when they left the field, you need captains to agree to take an early lunch. And I gave you, practically how I will deal with it. We will consult the caterers to see if lunch is ready, because I've done mistakes in the past where we just call an early lunch at, let's say, at 11:40, and meanwhile the food wasn't ready yet. So and then everyone had to swallow their food, and captains and everyone was grumpy. So yeah. So if there's no agreement between the captains and the umpires to change the time for lunch, one will lunch then to be taken at the agreed time. Again, nowhere in the law does it say about consulting caterers, and I'm just telling you practically how we deal with it. Um, we do go chat to the caterers and take that information into account in if by taking an early lunch.
Sorry, Keeks, did you say we need to consult the captains?
No, no, because it's 15 minutes. I know according to the playing conditions it's 10 minutes, but you won't start play within 5 minutes. So that's why I
Mm.
asked earlier about the benchmark. Up until what time can you? But I know according to the playing condition it's 10 minutes.
Tila, help me if I'm wrong here, but that 30-minute benchmark is um for you to go and consult with the captains to get to an agreement to take an earlier lunch. Is that correct?
Yeah, the again, it is just a rule of thumb number. It's nowhere in the law or playing
Mm.
condition do they say 30 minutes. It's just something that they've been applied over the years that they've applied. Um, let's see if once we get to 30 minutes before lunch, if we can take an early lunch. And we know also with experience, caterers, and we know the players wants a hot meal. So in all my years, meals are never ready at 11:40, because I know players wants a hot meal. So they usually try to get the lunch ready by 12 o'clock. They put the burners on. They also don't want to put the burners on too early and burn the food. So they put the burners on about, I would say, between 11:50 and 12 o'clock to get the food nice and hot. So it's nothing. It's just over the years we know, also knowing what time usually caterers get the food ready to make sure players get a hot meal during lunch. So that's where they just this 30-minute benchmark comes in, because we know if it rains, let's say at 11:30, doesn't help you take an early lunch because the food's not going to be ready. Experience just and knowing the caterers. But according to the law, if there are more than 10 minutes and it rains and you go off, you can activate this clause by going to the captains and asking them, is it okay if we take an early lunch? But then again, take into account whether the caterers are ready or not, because it doesn't help you at 11:40 wanting to take an early lunch and the food is not ready. Then everyone sits around for 40 minutes doing nothing. And I had the case already. We sat through the whole of lunch, and lunch were not ready. And when we took the field, and you can imagine a grumpy fielding captain. Did I answer your question, Wimpy?
Yes, thanks, Tila.
Yeah, interactive. The penultimate question for the day.
Keeks,
T,
kan
T,
ek maar skiet?
Yeah. Ek sal
All right.
aanvul.
Thanks. So, at the close of innings, there is 25 minutes left before tea. And according to law and playing conditions, if there's 30 minutes or less remaining to tea, and there's a innings comes to an end, you will take tea immediately. So in this case, you will take tea from 14:35, and play will start again for the second innings, or the next innings will commence at 14:55 with no overs lost due to the change of innings.
Well done, Wimpy. To get full marks, you can see they're giving you overs here.
Mm.
So they're expecting you to tell them how many overs left.
What's it?
You need to
40.
round it up. You need to round that
Yeah,
up because it's the end of the innings. So that now becomes
there's
65 overs. So you deduct the 65 from the 104.
39 overs left in a day.
Yeah, well done. There's the law. It must be 30 minutes or less for tea. And if it is, you activate this clause by taking tea immediately. You'll incorporate the 10-minute change of innings into the tea interval, and hence you will not deduct any overs. You will not deduct your 2 overs, which the playing condition states. Please deduct 2 overs. But because this falls during the tea, no deduction of 2 overs. So the remaining overs for the day is 104 minus 65. Well done, Keeks, for rounding it up to the next whole number. So 39 overs, and always please and never forget, put in brackets minimum. Next one.
You can't take tea immediately or at the declaration. It's more than 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Stem saam.
And because there's a declaration, that also means that the 59.1 also needs to be rounded up to the next whole number. So that becomes 60 overs for the day. Your T will then be from 14:23 till
Mm-mm.
14.
No, you just said we don't take tea.
Ah, sorry. So you will take a 10 minutes innings change from 14:23 till 14:43, and then you will play until
33.
your, yeah, 43, 14:43 or 20 minutes.
No, no,
Then you will,
no. Change of innings only 10 minutes.
I you'll take a 10 minutes, 14:23 till 14:33. You will then play till 3 o'clock for your scheduled tea interval. You will deduct the 60 overs that was bowled from the 104 together with the 2 overs that you will deduct for the change of innings because that was not during a scheduled break.
Mm. You'll be left with 42 overs minimum for the day.
Baie mooi, manne. I'll just stating the playing condition again. If 30 minutes remains within the interval is already in progress, play to resume at the end of the 10-minute interval. Because this is not within 30 minutes to T, we cannot activate that other clause where it says take an early T. So we now need to take the 10-minute change of innings interval from 14:23 till 14:33. So the innings of team B to start 14:33 and play to continue till 3 o'clock when we will take T. So now you have to deduct 2 overs for the change of innings interval. So remaining overs for the day is 104 minus 60 that was rounded up minus 2 gives you 42 overs minimum. Baie mooi manne. Well done. Last one for the day.
Okay. So because Team A has lost their 9th wicket, 3 minutes or less before the scheduled time for lunch, we will need to play an additional 30 maximum of 30 minutes before we can take lunch. So if the 9th wicket has, or the 10th wicket has not fallen, at the rescheduled time for lunch, which would be 12:40, you will take lunch from 12:40 until 13:20.
Keegan?
Geeks, happy?
Happy with that?
Okay. As Wimpy said, 9 wickets down, so we need to delay the tea interval by a max of 30 minutes. So we'll extend lunch by 30 minutes, or unless they take the 10th wicket. So if we get to 12:40, they're still 9 down, you'll have to take lunch from 12:40 till 13:20. But if they take the 10th wicket, for example, at 12:30, we'll then take lunch immediately, and lunch to be 40 minutes duration from 12:30 till 13:10. Daar sê, baie mooi manne. Well done. Nice interactive session. I'm now opening the floor for any questions, comments.
Ek is eintlik die bangste vir hierdie vir hierdie sessies. Smaak my die ander is daar minder goeders om te onthou as waar met hierdie is daar baie meer clause that can get activated. Just an observation.
Yeah. So now, you need to cop also now, because it's now lots of clauses now that now needs to be considered when when looking at this. So in the exam they mixing all these things. So you've got guys going off, making up lost time, and also might include a penalty time, and then they'll include a change of innings interval. Almal sommer in een dag. And that's where you need to hou kop and apply these laws. And as you saw now, it's not just, you can't just look at one or two laws or one law in isolation. You need to be looking at other laws as well to get to the correct answer. And also, I mean, once we start doing a full example where you also now need to take the making up lost time into account, where you now reschedule your cessation time. Let's say you lost 2 minutes, 20 minutes early in the day. Your new cessation time is now 17:15. It's now not 17:30 anymore. And then late in the day, you lose another 30 minutes. Now you need to reschedule your cessation time again to 18:20. Now you need to. So as you can see, it is a kopo. You know the theory, you know how to apply it, but because everything happens in a single day, where there's rain, change of innings, alles gebeur op een dag, and you need to apply everything and lots of clauses and look at lots of playing conditions to get to your answer. But don't worry, because we're going to do lots of examples. We're going to prepare you thoroughly for this. I mean, it's like, or if I can equate it to, I can remember when I started driving a car, I was like, then they said to me, you're going to have to um, put in the clutch, put it in first gear, change gear, drive, indicate, look here. I'm like, how can you do all those things at once? I mean, it's impossible. How can I change gears and do the clutch and petrol brakes, turn, look here, look at signs in the road, look at, it's impossible. It's not possible. But the more I was, I drove, and then the better I get. Same here. Now it might think, yo, it's a clone, it's such a lot. How well, don't worry, guys. We'll prep you properly. You will be able to come end of June, Master. Actually, I need to discuss that with you, but I'll get back to you now, just in terms of the date for the exam. Um, come when it's time for you to write the exam. As I said, you won't be nervous. You'll be able to change gears, um, use the clutch, use the brakes. You should be able to do 360s in your car, wheelies in your car, go on the side, go two wheels sideways after Tom and I prepped you for the exam. So don't worry. It's still new. You might think, oh, it's information overload here. It is information overload because you're now covering laws and playing conditions that in all your years of umpiring that you haven't dealt with, that you haven't been exposed to. So, but yeah, the more we do this, the more we drive this car, the better we're going to get. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I know we busy preparing for the exam, but as you mentioned earlier, I think the more you do the examples, the easier it will become because, and I also mentioned earlier about all these clauses now and all these activations and what will you have 2 minutes, you have 3 minutes, you now have a 30 minutes, you have a 10 minutes, and you need to know when to use which of these clauses. And
Hmm.
um, for us not having to be in umpiring modern cricket, it is a bit difficult to understand all this theory, but being on the field applying it should be a bit easier to actually applying the playing condition or applying the law. But yeah, we have to do the tough part. We have to study. We have to prepare for the exams. Unfortunately, you have to write it out before you can do it on the field.
Yeah, agree 100% with you. You need to know the theory for you to be applying it. And I mean, as you do this week in, week out, and you apply this like second nature. You do it without thinking because you do it. You do so many games year in, year out. Yeah, you get used to it. You know what to do, but you still need to oil that machine. Don't take this for granted. If you don't oil the machine, there is always the potential of getting caught with your pants down. So yeah. Any other comments, questions?
No further questions or comments for the recording.
Okay, copy that. Stop the recording now. And now the recording is stopped. Now I can say, I miss my number one. Oh, I miss